The scripture for this morning comes from the Old Testament in 1 Kings chapter 8, and the context is David has died and Solomon has built the temple, and this is in the midst of the dedication of the temple. I'll be reading 8:4 through 13. So they brought up the ark of the Lord, the tent of meeting, and all the holy vessels that were in the tent. The priests and the Levites brought them up. King Solomon and all the congregation of Israel who had assembled before him were with him before the ark, sacrificing so many sheep and oxen that they could not be counted or numbered. Then the priests brought the ark of the covenant of the Lord to its place in the inner sanctuary of the house, in the most holy place underneath the wings of the cherubim. For the cherubim spread out their wings over the place of the ark, so that the cherubim made a covering above the ark and its poles. The poles were long, that the ends of the poles were seen from the holy place in front of the inner sanctuary, but they could not be seen from outside. They are there to this day. There was nothing in the ark except the 2 tablets of stone that Moses had placed there in Horeb, where the Lord made a covenant with Israelites when they came out of the land of Egypt. When the priests came out of the holy place, a cloud filled the house of the Lord, so that the priests could not stand to minister because of the cloud. And the glory of the Lord filled the house of the Lord. Then Solomon said, "The Lord has said that he would dwell in thick darkness. I have built you an exalted house, a place for you to dwell forever." This is the wisdom of God. I like the dark. There's always been in the past, some conflict with me and my family over the dark because they always want to turn the lights on. And my mother-in-law in particular, when she visits, she wanted to turn every light on in the house because she felt ease and comfort that way. And I would turn around and try and turn all of them off. And at least one of my motivations for turning them off is because I have a father who is very sensitive to conservation. I imagine my sister remembers this. We were told always to turn the lights off, and so I did. My father was an environmental ethics teacher, and he told us a lot about climate change back in the 70s, so think of that. But it wasn't just to save energy that I turned all the lights off. It's because I like the dark. In the evening, I like to sit in the dark. Maybe a candle or two. I find it very reassuring, but it sometimes troubles others. Once when Paula and I were living in a cheap garage apartment in Claremont, a homeless man came up behind the little apartment. We could hear him, and he was scratching and making a lot of noise, and she freaked. And what she wanted to do, guess what she wanted to do? Turn on all the lights. And I said to her, no, that's not smart because he can see us. The thing to do to feel safe is turn them all off and sit in the dark. Sometimes I think there's too much light in the world. I remember National Geographic published pictures of light pollution in the United States, and it's sobering. A man named John Bortle came up with a scale of light and dark in the sky and called it, of course, the Bortle Dark Sky Scale. He mentions that decades ago, somebody could drive a couple miles to be out in the dark. Now the average, if you really want to see the sky at night, 150 miles. Let's not be too surprised because we've been battling the dark for a long time. Fear of the dark has always been a primal fear for children. I don't know about you all, but my children had night lights. Do we all have inherent fear of the dark? I think of the hunter-gatherers sitting around their fire, looking out into the dark forest and fearing the dark. And then now I think about how we find ourselves sitting in the dark, fearful of all that is out in the light in the streets with guns that could harm us. It's turned around. The traditional story is that light is good and dark is bad. And if anyone who wants to back that up, you can find passages in the Bible that support that. Remember, the Bible is multivalent. There are some texts that say different, and one of them I just read in 1 Kings, in which Solomon dedicates the temple. The priests, because of a cloud, nobody could see. They could not do their work. And it says, God has told us that he lives in the dark, where no one can see him. I've built this splendid temple, O God, to mark your invisible presence forever. I've also been fond of Psalm 139. Is there any, this is from the Message, is there any place I can go to avoid your spirit, to be out of your sight? If I climb to the sky, you are there. If I go underground, you are there. If I flew on the morning's wings to the far western horizon, you'd find me in a minute. You're already there waiting. Then I said to myself, oh, he even sees me in the dark. At night, I'm impressed in light. It's the fact. Darkness isn't dark to you. Night and day, darkness and light, they're all the same to you. This is one of my devotional favorites that I like to read to remind myself that God is in the dark too. God is in the dark. Culturally, we have a kind of conspiracy theory about race that is attached to this. Embedded in our culture is for a long time has been this internal understanding that light is good and dark and black are not. It's not a conscious belief. It has been something that has been growing in our very being and souls and in our cells of our body for centuries of racism. This is why racism is systemic. You can have racism and not know it. Parenthetically, I have problems with the phrase people of color. This implies that white is not a color. Therefore, it becomes an ideal. It regurgitates the embedded conspiracy theory that black is bad and white is best. Am I not a person of color too? Black lives matter. Dark lives matter. All lives matter just means somebody wants to say white lives matter. Then there's this huge prejudice in media and entertainment. Just look at Star Wars, the dark side of the Force. Open your mind, son, to the feelings of resentment and hate, my son. The dark side awaits you. Then, of course, you have Disney long before that. Scar, Shan Yu, and Mulan. The witch in Snow White. And why is it Snow White? Why did they come up with Snow White? Why not Jennifer Dark? I don't know. Scientists say that 2/3 of the cosmos is what is called dark matter. The only way we know that this dark matter is out there is because of the behavior of gravity. When I heard this thought, I said to myself, you know, the human soul appears also to be 2/3 dark matter. Darkness is also in the recesses of our interior being. The danger of the model of light versus dark is that we think of our interior darkness as bad and a place where God is not. And God is not absent. God is not absent in the dark places and the caverns of our souls. Not only is God in the most interior darkness, it's also a place where we can meet God and experience a great deal of healing. The myth is that we know ourselves. Most people, I think that they completely know themselves. So we can live by ourselves. We don't need anybody's help. We don't need anybody's interpretation. Whatever we decide is true. Personally, I think everybody could benefit from therapy. Why are we like this? How do we really feel about this? Where have we been hurt in the past? What conspiracy theories have we created to help us feel safe when they are not true? What stories have we told ourselves? What traumas have we experienced? What experiences in life have formed us? When I was a toddler, I had a bad case of the croup, so bad that I had to have a tracheotomy. At the time, of course, I don't remember that in my head, but I asked my mother about it, and she told me about how at that time you couldn't go with your child into surgery. So I had to be given over to the nurse, and my mother remembers me wailing. And I understand that as possibly a very formidable experience that led to my identity. And knowing it allows me to be gracious with myself. Not knowing it, one could say, I'm feeling this way because of some conspiracy theory. It's somebody else's fault that I feel this way, rather than going into myself and discovering all that makes myself up. The truth is, we don't know ourselves. Oftentimes, we don't really know why we do the things we do. And sometimes when we challenge people on their belief that is demonstrably untrue, will they admit it? No, because the facts are not the source of the feeling or belief. It's the dark matter in themselves that they do not want to face. Racism is an example. It's not simply that people are not smart, they're lost. We become victims of our feelings. As an example, I would contend that white supremacists do not know themselves. I likely think they don't really understand that they even have an interior life. Their ideas and prejudices and biases are who they are, and they're all on the surface. To know oneself, one must explore the dark, the recesses of oneself, hidden and suppressed feelings, forgotten and quelled experiences, all have influence on our lives and selves. Open hearts also means having an open soul, knowing that God will be in the dark. I don't know if I've mentioned this, but last spring, I participated in a grief group at Virginia Mason Hospital for those who have experienced traumatic loss. One of the exercises was that we would go to the right side of our brain and we were to draw a picture of the most traumatizing thing that happened to us. Not really something you want to do, and it is painful. It was a cry fest. But there was great learning and understanding that came out of it. Instinctively, we want to just get rid of all this. We don't want to face that, but when we suppress that interior shock and pain, it's still there. And when we suppress it, we suppress the ability to know ourselves. And when we fear the dark, we will not know God. It is not the dark that's dangerous. It's fear of the dark and believing that the dark is bad. You know, as an example, Trump always makes the best example for just about everything. And Trump is the perfect example for somebody who does not know himself. But to be fair, there is also Governor who? Andrew Cuomo. It seems to me his political persona is himself. So he worked very hard to keep that because he's feeling a great deal of loss right now. Know thyself, said Socrates, a prescient warning. During the pandemic, I suspect that people have had a little more time than normal on looking at ourselves and peering into the interior dark matter. How do we respond when we do that search? Do we want to escape? Although it may feel right to avoid looking into our interior self and accepting the traditional model of dark is of the devil, denying 2/3 of our soul, it just leads to more ignorance and suffering. As I said, I think we all could benefit from therapy. Actually, in our tradition, there is a practice of exploring our interior life in the church. It's called spiritual direction, and it has been around for millennium. And it is not therapeutic. It is a very spiritual practice. So all of this is a very spiritual thing. I think we could say we're living in dark times. The pandemic is now getting worse because of the Delta variant. There's still plenty of political unrest. Afghanistan is falling. There's smoke and heat all over the place. The climate change report was the worst it has ever been. Doesn't this feel a little dark? The dark is not bad. God is in the dark and in the dark matter of our souls. As Jesus is incarnate in the world, it isn't just in the light side of the force. Jesus is incarnate in the dark things. And if we ever find ourselves there, God will be there with us. There is no place where God is not. Where can I go from your spirit, or where can I flee from your presence? If I ascend to heaven, you are there. If I make my bed in Sheol, you are there. If I take the wings of the morning and settle on the farthest limits of the sea, even there your hand shall lead me, your right hand shall hold me fast. If I say, surely the darkness shall cover me, and the light around me become night, even the darkness is not dark to you. The night is as bright as day. For darkness is as light to you. Amen.